last video, we looked at the pastoral planning parameters with regard to Sunday Masses. And in this video, I want to look at some pieces of data that can begin to help us think through of how these parameters might be applied by our planning team to come up with our plan for our family of parishes for the future. So, if we look at the current number of Masses that are being celebrated amongst these 9 parishes, there are currently 11 weekend Masses that are occurring at 9 different locations. So there's either 2 or 3 on Saturday or 8 or 9 on Sunday, depending upon the rotation schedule that is happening within the 3 parishes of Osmond, Randolph, and Pierce. These Masses all begin starting 5 p.m. on Saturday, and the last Mass starts at 10:30 a.m. on Sunday. So we have a number of Masses all occurring during the same amount of time. With the future of only having 2 priests certainly can't do that kind of number of Masses all during that kind of short period of time. We also have some information here upon the number of weekday Masses, but I'll come back to weekday Masses in another video. If we look at this map, we can see the spread of the Mass attendance. This is the Mass attendance that's recorded at our parishes. This one was in 2021. So we had 1,461 people attending Mass when this was recorded. And so the numbers next to the various parishes tell you how many people were at each of the various Masses. One of the things that can help us plan for the future is also looking back to where we've come in the past. And so I want to next consider some of the statistics of the trends of Mass attendance that we've had within our parish community. So if you look at this kind of graphic, I apologize, it's a little bit complicated, but I wanted to take a snapshot of some various moments in time, starting with 2006, this year of 2021, and then what potentially things could look like in 2032 with regard to the numbers of Masses. So back in 2006, and in the way that the various parishes that are currently going to be in our grouping were connected with other parishes, there were actually 11 parishes at that time served by 6 priests. And there were 20 weekend Masses. I also have the weekday Masses, but we'll focus primarily here on the weekend Masses. So there were 20 weekend Masses being celebrated in 2006. So the numbers below that, if you take the 20 weekend Masses and you divide it by number of parishes, then you get that there were 1.8 Masses per parish, right? Almost 2 Masses per parish. And with regard to priests, each priest was celebrating 3.3 Masses if you divide it evenly amongst them. And how many people were attending each of those Masses? Well, 157 people if you divide it evenly across the Masses. Obviously, that wasn't what was occurring in reality. It's not evenly split. But that kind of helps us to see the sizes of those Masses overall. So that's what it was in 2006. So if we jump then to 2021, the 9 parishes that are going to be joined now are part of various groups that now include 14 parishes. And these 14 parishes are now being served by 6 priests. There's 19 weekend Masses that are going on. So if you divide that again, you find that it's now only 1.4 Masses per parish compared to what it was in 2006. So fewer Masses per parish. Masses per priest is pretty close to being the same as what it was, right? 3.2, just over 3 Masses per priest. But even though there are more parishes and 1 less weekend Mass, the number of people, as you divide it across that, has actually gone down from 157 to 133. And so that points out the fact that there's fewer people attending Masses. So if we jump now ahead to 2032 and consider our 9 parish family will be served by 2 priests, and as we saw in the parameters, each of those 2 priests can at most celebrate 4 Masses at 2 different locations. That's the most number of Masses each of the priests could do would be 4 each, which would give a total of 8 weekend Masses. Now, if we're asking 2 priests to do 8 weekend Masses, If you divide that amongst the parishes, that is just under 1 Mass per parish. Of course, we know that in reality, as we saw in the parameters, that if the priest is doing 4, he's only to do it at 2 different locations. So this is on average about 1 per parish, not that they're each at all the different parishes. But one of the things to note here in this is, well, how many masses does that mean per priest? Well, it now means 4 masses per priest, compared to what it was in 2021 and 2006, when it was just over 3 masses. Now it is certainly 4 masses per priest. So even though the number of masses has gone down, and it may feel as though priests must be doing a whole lot less, right? Because now they have less masses. Well, there's a third the number of priests that are doing these, and so even though the masses are been cut in half from what it was, now or cut more than half from what it was, it's increasing the number of masses that each priest will say if we have them each do 4 masses. And if we look at the number of people per mass, we see 182. Now, this number is based upon if every single person attending Mass in 2021 is still attending, we still have the same number of people attending in 2032, which we'll look here in a second based upon the data is not quite accurate. But before we do that, this table points out, it kind of repeats some of the things we just saw. So we've got 2006, 2021, and 2032, and we've got people compared to the number of masses in 2006 and people compared to the number of masses in 2021. We see the 157 down to 133 people per mass. And then in 2032, we've got the 3 options that end up with what the priest could do. So we know that each priest could do 4 masses at 2 locations, or they can do 3 masses at 3 locations. So that means, based upon the combination that could be used, is if both of them are doing 4 masses at 2 locations, they could do 8, and so that means there would be 182 people averaging attending the Mass. Or one could do 4 and one could do 3 masses at 3 locations, and so that would be the 7. So there'd be 209 people averaging attending each Mass. Or if both of them did 3 masses at 3 locations, then it would be on average 244 people per Mass. But this number, 1,461, is the number of people attending in 2021, not for 2032. We actually need to look at the trend of our Mass attendance to see what would be a more accurate number. So this graph shows the Mass attendance trends of our family of parishes since 2003. And so in 2003, we can see the blue line at the top is the total number of parishioners, whereas the red line is the Mass attendance. And so if you can find the percent difference between those, and so the percent of those that are attending in 2003 was 69%, and going down to today, we're down to 42%. Now that is true that it's after COVID, and so you can see that kind of dip at 2020 in the red line. That is indeed due to COVID, and then we see something of a recovery there. So what I'm going to show you next is a graph that gives a trend line as to what we can predict for, if it follows the exact same trend into the future, what would 2032 look like. And to do that, I'm going to remove the COVID dip and recovery, just to try to get a more accurate as to what the trend had been without COVID. This graph shows a rather sobering view as to the future trend of the number of people attending Mass by 2032. So finding the best fit line as to the number of parishioners we see in 2032 is predicted to be down to 3,000, just over 3,200, and the Mass attendance all the way down to 877 attending Mass. For now a decline down to just 27% of Catholics within our parishes attending Mass. It's pretty bleak. Our desire is for that not to happen, Based upon the trends that have been going on, that's what's predicted, but human beings don't have to follow data trends. We can change the trend that we want. We can't change, for example, the fact that our populations in our areas are declining, but what we can do is sharing the faith and drawing others to become a part, evangelizing, which is all part of the pastoral vision that we have of making our parishes missional. If our parishes become missional, then we can change these trends. But if we do nothing, if we don't become missional parishes, then these lines kind of show the direction that we should expect us to be in. It's not meant to depress us, but rather to motivate us to make changes that we need to do if we don't want this to come to reality. So if we were to add this and look at the possible masses that we were to do in 2032, if we only had 877 people going, whether it's 8 masses, 7 masses, or 6 masses, in each of those cases, you're somewhere between 110 to 146 people at each of those masses. This map here reminds us again of the different options of 4 masses at 2 locations per priest, or the 3 masses at 3 locations. And what I've highlighted on this one are in red. The numbers are the parishes that more recently had the greatest number of attendees. And that can be something that we can consider when we're deciding where masses would be. Also, the parameters point out that individuals should not be expected to travel more than about 20 miles for a Sunday Mass. And just looking at the 4 communities where we have the greatest Mass attendance, you can see those highlighted in the gray circles. Shows you how much area 20 miles actually covers. It's quite a large area. The red circle there is centered around Laurel specifically. Of course, this is only so helpful because obviously, we don't travel as the crow flies with regard to Mass. We have to drive down real roads, and so I've put forth the distances from the smaller parishes to the larger surrounding communities, just to give an idea as to how far it is for driving distances. And so this can be part of our discussion as well in deciding about the placement of Sunday Masses. So those are some pieces of data of our parish communities that can assist us in thinking through how this planning may work for us in the future, as well as some of the things that our representatives from our parishes will be working with in developing our plan that will eventually be submitted to the Archbishop.